Hello, good evening, everyone. Black Hat Edge 1, welcome to my stream. So today going to continue, not continue, Jesus. Starting to play this awesome game, Myth of Madness. I mean, for me it's like a road, like really special game. I played this to hell. I actually bought it with my own money, I think. So yeah. I found that there was some kind of source port or something like that. They supported on this game, which is awesome. So you have a lot of it's graphically just like it's awesome. You want to see it. So let's do this. I hope it's going to work. Yes, okay, it works. So does it work? Yes, it does. Okay. So I'm going to just delete this one because I was testing new. Let's make it a new. We go first with this one. HG1. Let's go with ABBA first. Now first we have a cruise. This is just like you're going around the city, but most of it doing like all of the blitz races, checkpoint races, circuit races. We'll see. But yeah, mostly let me just check what you can open. Because you have like to do unlock this first on any 2 races. This is 6 checkpoint races. I mean 5 circuit races. Ooh, I want to go for circuit races then. And this is just to get the pro. I think that this is a goal actually, to get this one. Circuit race, huh? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know which one I'm racing. So I'll go with not with this one. Yeah.
It may be shady under the elm, but the action on the street is hot.
Oh, right, I forgot to. You need to control, not joystick. Keyboard, thank you. Audio options. I want to have. Actually, I want it on me. A bit more quiet. There we go. Yes, on. Okay.
Do you feel like you're running around in circles today?
I know that you have something. Yeah, you press F1 and you're getting all of this stuff. HUD toggle. Oh no, it's not HUD. It's not HUD. Wide hand reverse, no. Dashboard. Is it dashboard or is it HUD? So this HUD. Ah, this one, yes. This one is pretty much easy. It's so funny that car is so shiny. You have to be really careful because physics are not like it's strong like side. And yeah, also this happens. Also try not to crash because you can damage the car and you actually you fail. You basically fail. Also, I think we are in a Manhattan, which is that's why it's called like Myth of Madness Manhattan Edition. But yeah, I also ordered the Myth of Madness 2 finally. So probably going to play that one after this one. Because it's not too long, but it can be hard. I mean, it's a long time ago that I was playing this as legit. I mostly was driving in a cruise mode. Just driving in different conditions. and exploring the city. I mean, it's not actually big. It's not a big map, you know. Oh yeah.
Hell no, go for the finish.
Yeah, go for the finish.
The new
Du-du-du.
Ford Mustang, reborn to run.
Du-du-du-du-du-du-du. Yes. Let's go next.
You'll be going every way but west on Whacker for this race.
Ooh.
You may even have time for a stroll in the park.
See ya! Do we have a wide angle transition? Okay, external view. Is there like a backspace? Okay. Oh yeah. There we go. Also, AI is also not that good, you know. It's like. Yeah, you really need to tip it. It depends how much physics do you have. Like, it doesn't really matter, I think. Even though you put it on really realistic, it's not realistic. It's just an arcade. Shortcut, not completely, but kinda.
You're on the final lap.
Also, yeah, they're playing with joystick. I'm not playing with the joystick unless I maybe try with the. Does it have support a keyboard? Gamepad. Okay. I think this is because it's a portable game. Come on, drive! This is one of this, okay.
Hell no, go for the finish.
Oh really? Yeah, okay. I wasn't paying attention about the tree.
Now for something completely different. You just unlocked the city bus.
City bus. Okay.
Get ready for some subterranean trips. Let's see just
Uh-oh.
how low you need to go to win.
Coming through. I mean, even the graphics for today, it's not too bad. Yeah, this is how I can do it. Oh, no. You almost hit at me. Yeah, I think I will need to go into the manual transition just. Controls. I prefer still keyboard, that is still for me. Let me go to the quick race currently. Automatic options, controls. And one, okay. That still works. Because the automatic is not really that great. Completely will not be hitting me? Okay. Come on, this is better than that Beetle. You need to survive, you know, it's like... Hey Chicago, welcome, how are you doing, man? Welcome, welcome. My chat is a bit broken, I mean, it's chatbot. How are you doing, man? Ooh. No! Oh god. Oh right, how are you doing? How are you doing that actually? How it is for you there? For me, just nothing special, nothing is different. Everything is normal. Finally, I'm not playing something different than it is Dark Souls. Probably won't be able to catch him. And I believe I'm smoking, yeah. Bigger pet. Ooh, bigger pet. Didn't know that. That is awesome. How like this, huh? I decided to wear this today. Yeah, but I won't be able. Maybe I will be able to do it. I don't know. Just a second. Oh yeah! Yeah, right at the end. Awesome. Look at Europeans. True that.
Downtown streets have been blocked off for some kind of crazy.
Oh, they have.
It looks like they'll be running laps around Daily Plaza. I wonder what City Hall's gonna have to say about this.
No, you will not. You see, he's cheating too. Haha! Hey! Shoo, you bastard. Oh, Saturday. Actually, I'm not at home at Saturday, so... I'm home alone. No kids, no parents, so... Woohoo! Get some chicas and that's... Yep. Although I still need to take care of my dog, so... You know... I still need to take her out at 8 PM or something like that. Yeah, 8 PM. Oh no, I am at home, just parents are not at home. No parents and no kids. Just me and the dog.
Come on, now get to the finish line, pal.
Come on. Yes.
Mustang, reborn to run, especially in Chicago.
Especially in Chicago.
Don't waste your time fumbling with the football.
Ooh, this one. Ooh, I think I will not be able to do it. Don't kill me. They are really aggressive, this AI. Oh, you bastard. No, you're not. Oh, damn it. Oh yeah, you just crash people back there. This Mustang V8, man, it just like Even though it's not, I think it wasn't really that popular, but I would have it, like, because you know, V8 in such a regular car, I mean regular, quote unquote, it's still like, it's a V8, come on. Merc muscle, you know? Check one. It's such a weird 90s sound, you know, it's like... It's still great, it looks great, even on my resolution, it's just like awesome. Because I have a new monitor and different resolution, it's just like, look, with this mod, it's just awesome. I hope that it works also for the Myth of Madness too, so. Actually, no, I didn't. I don't know if I have them. Legit, you know. Oh, for Ford Mustang Fastback here.
Well, looks like we're in for another long one today, folks. If you flip it around a fountain just right, you should be able to cut a couple of seconds off.
Actually, I'm going to quit race menu. I guess the... Oh, they're mostly the same. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the same engine. But still, you know, the classic. Oh, I'm dreaming about this car. Which is probably it's not great for these conditions. Ah, come on, you dude! Change it. No, you don't. You just beat everything you're trying to get all of the cars because cars are locked. If you want, like, I didn't have that Ford Mustang Fastback. I didn't have this one. It's unlocked. Still needs. This is for checkpoints, and I'm not going to do this yet. And this one is the most important. I mean, the most important, just to unlock, accumulate 8,000, you know, as a pro and blah blah blah. Yeah. It's actually quite a simple game. It's probably going to be short. And I'm the first one, huh? Oh no, you bastard! Oh, come on! It's getting harder right now. Dude. How rude, yeah, it is. Very rude. And not go to these jumps. Oh boy. Car's not good, doing great. That was a bit rough of a turn. I'm third right now. You don't need to be a first, but still, you know. Shit! No bueno, man. Is it possible to... Oh. And this is lap 3, you know. And 3 laps. Oh. Now this is really terrible.
Vehicle damage penalty.
Sure, Castle. Yeah, now I have this penalty, now you can go. Damn, even this one is coming in. Yeah, those two ones are really far away. Even though there's still one lap, I want to like at least learn the circuit. And this is like a dark sort of game of racing games, if you ask me. Yeah, the sims are harder, I mean, but still, you know. Yeah, the blue one is so far away, man. This was not the best. Nope.
I keep hearing
Restart.
city workers are blocking off streets all over the south side. They're apparently setting up for some kind of car race. What's this all about? You know what's going on? Give us a call down at the station.
No, you bastard! I'm kinda with them. I mean, at least they're like, they're going on the road. I can actually do shortcuts. That is at least a plus. It's a bit easier on you. Because how the physics works and all that stuff, it's like unpredictable. At least turning left and right works. Ooh, okay. Still the first one. Yee. Ugh, crap! Almost a heart attack. Crap, crap, no. I was doing so well. It's also because of the rain. The rain is like annoying. Because it's sliding. Crap. Of course he's the first.
You're on the final lap.
No, oh my. How he was not damaged, that dude, man. Yeah, it was a snap. As I was saying before, this game doesn't have a great physics. Maybe I caught him here, but probably I will not. Come on, let's go, you bastard. Come on!
Final checkpoint.
Oh!
The new Ford Mustang. Born to run,
Aha!
especially in Chicago.
Woohoo! that was close. Whew.
Sections of downtown on both sides of the river are being blocked
Frick
off
yeah.
today. They're setting
I
up
am cheeky bastard.
What I want to know is, where do you sign up for this kind of thing? Hey, I
We have a
want to
cop there.
Where do they get the cars? Who in the heck is authorizing all this? Can we get somebody from the mayor's office here on the phone?
Woohoo! That was smooth. That was the worst.
Get set to go sailing around the center of the city for the circuit race. Knowing when to cut corners could be the secret to your success.
You goofed. I mean, physics goofed, not me.
You're on the final lap.
We know, thank you. Oh no, no, oh no. I think I will need something fast for this one. Let's try
Go sailing around
a bit more with this car.
ready for the circuit race. Knowing when to cut corners could be the secret to your success.
No.
You're on the final lap.
No. No, especially not. This one's going to be hard.
To the finish line, pal.
Okay, good race. What I have? Which one is fast? Yeah, so I need to go with this one.
Sections of downtown on both sides of the river are being blocked off today. They're setting up for some kind of circuit race. What I want to know is, where do you sign up for this kind of thing? Hey, I want to play too. Where do they get the cars? Who in the heck is authorizing all this? Can we get somebody from the mayor's office here on the phone?
Yeah, this I was afraid of.
Get set to go sailing around the center of the city for the circuit race. Knowing when to cut corners could be the secret to your success. Final lap.
God damn it. No, 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 no. Oh, they both go destroyed. Nice.
All those cool cars going real
Woo!
fast, and you won. That was pretty twisted.
I know, thank you.
Take advantage of the clear weather while you can, folks.
Uh-oh.
The sun is out, the streets are dry, and it may not last long.
This one's going to be rough. I remember this one. Whoops. Sorry. This is great. No. Oh, come on. Let's go, go, go. Crap. Almost destroyed in just one. Oh, crap. Come on, they're catching up on me. Oh boy. Destroyed? Not yet. I think one is stuck there. Kinda. Put that the red one.
Damage penalty.
No,
5
damn it.
seconds and you're as good as new.
Okay. Come on. I wonder how it is on a professional. Definitely going to do that. I mean, I want just to get that for the... Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. Why always in the corner just spin? Okay, two more. Like a glove? Maybe? Losing control. Okay, caught him. No, stop crashing. Actually, I can't afford that. Because they're really like... Come on. Oh, you suck. At least I'd stick with this one because it's fast enough. Not as durable. Oh look, another stuck one. They're just stuck, man. Who is alive still? Am I the only one? 1, 2, they're stuck. Only the green one is kinda taken care of. He's trying. Okay, I can...
You're on the final lap.
I will try to save the red one.
Damage penalty. 5 seconds and you're as good as new.
No? Okay. I'm gonna try it. Oh, this is the dashboard like this. Okay. Nope. At least you can see the damage there. You see down right, where it's from yellow to red. Also, this one is quite long. Oh, great. Smoking already. No, not great. Stop doing that. Prefer this one. Whee!
Final checkpoint.
No checkpoint.
You gotta have a lot of muscle to drive a car like that.
Yep. A lot of muscle. Whew, okay, that was kinda easy.
The trek through Old Town may tie you up in knots, but the run along the river should be righteous.
Now here I can slide more. No. The smallest mistake you make, you just screwed up. You crash a bit, you also screwed up. How many laps? 2 laps, okay. Come on.
You're on the final lap.
Come on. This is bad. But let's try. This is mostly no bueno. Ah! Yeah, that's rip.
Hold down, make nice
Try this again.
but the run along the river should be righteous.
Yeah, just the first corner, just slide.
Switch to hold down. You've got lots of open road ahead of you.
I'm alright. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Keep in mind that the barriers are your buddies. Follow those orange and white arrows, and they'll take you right to the finish line.
Try some stuff if I can. Of course I have a perfect grip. It's kinda not fair. Oh, come on. This gonna suck. It's almost the last one, okay. Try with this one.
The trek through Old Town may tie you up in knots, but the run along the river should be righteous.
Maybe this one's better. Wow, they just pass through like it's nothing. Pit stop? Nope. How do they like turn on a dime right away? It's push me a bit, yes, thank you. Bastard. They're like pushing me. Screw you, you asshole. Come on, I was doing good. Oh my god, what the hell was that? Nope.
The trek through Old Town may tie
Damn
you
it.
up in knots, but the run along the river should be righteous.
Nope.
Keep in mind that the barrier
Damn it.
buddy. Follow those orange and white arrows, and they'll take you right to the finish line.
They're already after me, no. I don't want to juke. I mean, not juke. I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm doing good actually. Except this. I'm not doing so well. Fuck you. Fuck you. I was doing so great, man. You piece of ass.
Final lap.
I jinxed myself. Oh, come on, no. Ugh.
Now let's go for the finish.
Oh, the yellow is getting destroyed. I'm not. God damn it. Wah.
I had no idea that Mustang could make moves like that. Especially
Oh,
on
shut up.
sidewalks.
Oh, shut up.
Keep in mind that the barriers are your buddy. Follow those orange and white arrows, and they'll take you right to the finish line.
Nope, I shouldn't be hitting that. Come on, come on. kinda need to be lucky here too. They're catching on me.
You're on the final lap.
Thank you. But keep it in the fourth here, you're doing correct actually. Also here, but you keep it in fourth too. Still keeping it in the fourth. Okay. I think I can do it. Okay, okay.
Come on, now get to the finish line, pal.
Come on, come on. No, oh no. Disaster strike. Push me, thank you.
The new
Oh,
tank,
whew, I was so lucky there.
especially in
Damn, okay. Whew. Damn, okay. That stupid tree, man. But yeah, I did it.
Hey, get ready to accelerate on the expressway.
Oof. Yeah, they can crash yourself, yeah. 2 laps, oh. This is gonna take a while. All around the Michigan. Not Michigan, Chicago. Chicago. Uh-oh. Top speed is like, yeah, more than desirable, but yeah, it's still fast though. Oh. How they can crash? I think they will not be crashing. I think I will need for the... This time we need the other car. The fastest one in the game.
You're on the final lap.
Top speed here is really important. I'm actually catching up, but still, you know. Yeah, probably won't be able to do this with this car. Unless something happens, something magical. Which I am hoping on, but doubt it.
Come on, now get to the finish line, pal.
Nah, it's... Okay, I'm going to be right back. And I'm back. Let me go back. Let's try this one.
When it comes to loops, it doesn't get any bigger than this.
Yeah, nope, not going to use that one. Focusing really hard. Yeah. Damn, this one goes really fast. 180 maybe? 167, okay. 176 actually. 77. That was a stupid mistake. Oh, that was a bump.
Final lap.
Okay, now I need to go away as fast as possible. I mean, as much as possible. Come on. Come on, we can do this. Here's the hard part. Yep. You mother. Probably would have won it, but come on.
Come on, now get to the finish line. Tomorrow on Chicago Today, we'll be talking about how to get ahead and stay ahead in traffic. You might just
Maniac, whoops. Because that exited the game. Whoops. Come on, okay. Actually, you can change this. Oh, I want to have most of this. Currently there is no sound,
when
but
it comes to loops, it doesn't get any bigger than this.
there we go. Some pedestrian. Oh, I love this kind of pedestrians, like polygon. So much fun. I think this is the first racing. No, it's not the first racing game. I think it was Street Road 1 and 2. The second one was actually harder because you have those bumps and you can easily just crash into it. This is kind of second racing game. Why I always keep veering off? Come on. Straight, man, be straight. same place, on the same freaking place.
Hey, when it comes to loops, this race is a Lollapalooza.
Can crash more, please, thank you. Can you imagine? What the hell was that?
Hey, get ready to accelerate on the expressway.
Jesus Christ, almost hit me. There's just these small bumps, you know, that they can screw you up. Come on, come on. Come on, we can do this. Oh, come on. Those guys are cheaters, you know, you're cheaters. I think the only get this one is like with that GTR or whatever it's called.
You're on the final lap.
Let's continue on. Maybe it would be better if I be on the other side, but I'm not quite sure. Oops. I would do this the first time. It'd be nice. Because the red one, it doesn't like follow me that much.
Finish. Hey, I don't want to beat around a...
Restart the race.
Hey, when
Thank
it
you.
comes to loops, this race is a Lollapalooza.
Come on, let's do this. It's taking a while because it's like a whole circuit around and around. No, like, yeah, like that.
Final lap. Vehicle damage.
Oh my god. Oh my god, I didn't know. Jesus Christ.
Hey, get ready to
Freak.
accelerate on the expressway.
Sorry people, they're not like yelling. This is not helping. Damn it.
When it comes to loops,
I have to hit it right there. I have to hit it. Oh right, it's a checkpoint. Damn it. This is not bueno. Oh, Jesus Christ.
hey, when it comes to loops, this race is a lollapalooza.
Oh yeah. I don't know if this is the most efficient way it could be. Stop sliding! Come on, why are you sliding? Jesus Christ.
To accelerate on the expressway.
Suddenly there starts to slide, okay. I'm still kind of sliding on a... Okay. Yeah, I'm hearing like it's like keep sliding, but I don't know why. That turn, man. I believe that this is working. Oh, come on.
Final lap.
Come on, come on, come on, come on. Focusing so hard.
Come on, now get to the finish line. You gotta have a lot of
Whew,
fun with a
yes.
car like that.
Oh, nice. Okay, I finished all of the circuits. Nice. Beginner's looks are like... I mean, these checkpoint rates are like that, okay. Old trusty first Ford Mustang GT.
Are you ready to go streaking down State Street? Keep your pants on now.
Now this is much harder. You have traffic, you have opponents. And if you get the store to get the store, there is no repairing. Fire! I played this race so many times because I didn't know how to play the game. And there's, of course, there's cops.
Come on, now get to the finish line, pal. Hey, folks out of Florida telling me that you were set
Haha!
speed records at a magnificent mile today.
Why did this set? There is so much noise. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Wise. You can't always trust that arrow.
And this is a lot of your interpretation how you played it. where to go. You can choose your random points. I think this is still just fine. Just be careful. Okay, that, okay. You saw that bus. Careful! Traffic!
Final checkpoint.
Oh, hi. Whee!
All those cool cars
Hey.
going real fast, and you won. That was pretty twisted.
Thank you.
As the sun sets slowly on a city of big shoulders, commuters are scrambling for their cars. Last one on the expressway is a rotten egg.
Okay.
Hey,
I was totally wrecked here.
advice. Don't forget to buckle up.
And that's not nice. Sorry, damn it. Ah, shit. Oh, I'm going to the sea, of course. I'm in the lake.
As the sun sets slowly on a city of big shoulders, commuters are scrambling for their cars. Last one on the expressway is a rotten egg.
I think this is the car that you need to follow. Nah. Are you not finished? Oh, come on, that's pit stop, man. I mean, not a pit stop. Jesus, these cops are so aggressive, man.
Now go for the finish.
Yeah. This is the one that you need to follow like this. Nah.
Congratulations. You
Nice.
just earned the right to run the next round of races.
Thank you. Next set of races.
Welcome to the city of Chicago. I gotta say, I'm rather fond of this town, so please, try to leave it where you found it.
I don't know why they're doing this like they did. It's rather weird. course they're after me. No, I missed it. Ah.
If you're heading into town this morning, turn around. There've been some strange goings on in traffic today. The whole town is tied up.
Think I would prefer going different way here. Yeah, this is much better, so I can avoid those cops. Sorry. Sorry. Oh no, even more cops. This is fun. Jesus Christ, this is just a huge mess. Don't destroy me, you asshole. Yeah, go there.
Come on, now get to the finish line, pal.
Uh-oh. No. Oh, come on, I was so close.
A word to the wise. You can't always trust that arrow.
So close. They're always following you, but not them, you know. It's a bit unfair. Just tiny bit, you know. So try like this. And now you can go through here. How do you say about that, huh? Not too shabby. And no cops on me. And they are far behind me, my opponents. Very cool. So cool, Black Hat. I know I'm the best. Me smart, very smart.
The new Ford Mustang. Reborn to run, especially in Chicago.
Especially in Chicago.
Hey, a friendly word of advice. Don't forget to buckle up.
Ooh, this one. I remember this one. This one was hard. That is kind of hard. Jesus Christ. Smoking a bit. Two of them, right? Maniac! Stop doing that. Leave Britney alone. Okay? Told you, Britney alone, not you.
Remember, your automobile is not a toy. Just kidding.
Good joke. You're so funny. Damn it. Oh, come on! The cop is annoying.
It's high noon in the Windy City. Get ready to head downtown for a showdown.
Is this even possible to get like away from that? Oh, what the hell am I doing? Okay,
Hey,
let's
don't try
start
to
it.
grab a bite while you're driving at lunchtime today, folks. You're gonna need to keep both hands on the wheel.
What are you doing? Maniac! This might be viable, just less crashing. Ah.
You got a lot of choices to make. Are you gonna cut through the construction, or are you gonna take a Stanley through that back alley?
Unless I can try force through, but I don't know. Oh, come on, okay.
It's high
This
noon
was
in the
suck a
winter
try.
season. Get ready to head downtown for a showdown.
Sorry about that. Minor hiccup. Oh my god. This was such a try again. Thank you. Stupid traffic. My vehicle. No, don't come in. Ah. What the hell was that? It was not me touching it.
Hell, now go for the finish!
Please no cops.
I give that performance
Whew,
a
okay.
big thumbs up. That was the feel-good drive of the season.
Yes, nice. Let me check. Freeway fire. Is this what we were playing now?
Get ready for some exciting speed on
Yeah,
the expressway.
Okay. This one, the next one. Okay. Do you have all of them? No, not yet. This is still for checkpoint races. 5, okay, we are... Oh no, we're actually in the checkpoint there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Okay, this is it for me. This was fun. This was fun. pick something else than Dark Souls. So yeah, this is it for me. Thank you for everyone for being here. We appreciate it. Thanks to Shikaka for being here. Thanks to others who joined. We appreciate it. So yeah, the next thing is going to be on Wednesday. More of this game. We still have a lot of races to do, and even maybe I will go for pro. We'll see. I want to get that Panos GTR. So yeah. Otherwise, yeah. I wish you a nice day and have fun, and see you on Wednesday.